In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to create a simple program using file I/O in Java. We're going to use Eclipse for creating the project, and we're going to take advantage of the Eclipse workspace ability so that we can keep the relative path names where we will know where they work. In this case, we're going to write a very simple program that's going to do nothing but a very basic word count and line count of a text file. To start with, I've created a project. I call it File I/O, and inside that project I've created a Java class which I call main driver because it has our main entry point, which makes a Java application. To make all of this work, we're going to create us a variable. We're going to call that variable input fname, file name, and we're going to call the file name input data.txt. We're going to then create a secondary variable that we're going to call the output file name or fname. And this is going to be output data.txt. Now the next step is we have to open a buffered reader. The buffer reader will use a variable name we call br for buffered reader. And now we're going to instantiate that object by calling a buffered reader, but the buffer reader needs a file reader passed to it, so we're going to now at the same time instantiate a version of a file reader, and in there we're going to pass in the input fname so that we already have this. Now what's going to happen is we don't have any of the imports. So if we look in Eclipse, it's going to say, hey, you haven't imported the file reader. So we'll go ahead and let the IDE do its work. And we're going to come over here to the buffered reader, and it's going to say you haven't imported that. Let that happen. The new problem we have is because of a requirement of Java to declare any exceptions you throw, whether you throw them directly or someone you call does, we're going to allow the IDE to add the throws declaration for us. I tend to like this throws on a separate line, so I'm going to bring it down to a line. That's just personal preference. After creating the buffer reader, we're going to create a string that we're going to call str. We're going to read each line of the file into this variable. Since we are doing a word count and a line count program, we're going to set up our accumulators, our counters for each of these. So I'm setting up a line count and then a word count variable, and I'm initializing them to 0 because we're going to increment these as we see either words or lines added. Since we want to read the entire file, we're going to basically do a little trick here. I'm going to set equal the string to our buffer reader dot read line. What this will do is this will allow us to read an entire line, and as long as it doesn't come back null, we know we have valid data we want to look at. Now because the read line can throw another exception, we need to actually add that to the throws, and this will allow us to change our exception to IO exception, so now this works for us quite well. At this point, when we read a line, we know that the line counter can increment because we just already read a line. What we don't want to do is drop down to parsing the line if there's nothing there. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the basic length of the string, and if the length basically tells us that it is 0 or less, I'm going to do less. I don't need to, but I'm going to do it just to be safe. Then I'm going to drop into this if statement, and then we're just going to do a continued. This way we just go back to the top and we'll skip any of this code that could possibly break by having nothing on line. So then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to use a variable I tend to like to do when I'm breaking strings apart called parts. You can call it anything you want, but this works very easily. And then I'm going to call the split method. And on the split method for the string, I'm basically going to split on all spaces. Since spaces determine the breakage of words in the English language, we're just going to use this because now I know how many words are on the line based off of this. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the word count variable and I'm going to add the length of parts. And now this will allow me to basically add however many words to my word count, so I've got it. Once we're done with this entire loop, I'm going to take this buffer reader and we're just going to close it because it's always a good thing to close all resources when you are done with them. After we've done this, now all we have to do is start to prepare to write the output file. So the very first thing we're going to do is I'm going to create a variable. I'm going to call it myWriter. And myWriter is actually going to be a new file writer object, and that I'm going to pass in the variable of our output fname, and this will allow us to actually create it. Now what you're going to see is I haven't put it in, so I'm going to once again let the IDE identify it needs an import, let it bring in the import. Now the next thing I'm going to do the output very simple is I'm just going to create a variable that I'm going to call printer. This is how I'm going to write to the file. I'm going to use a print writer. And the print writer takes the myWriter object that I just created up above. Now just like before, it's going to say I don't know what the print is print writer, and it says I don't know what that is, can you import it? And I say just import it, get it out of my way. Now the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm now going to output everything I need. So I'm going to use the printer that I've created and I'm going to do a printf. The advantage once again of using all of these is we can use all of the methods that we would see for formatting. And I'm going to say the file, and I'm going to say %s because that'll give me the name, has %d words and %d lines, and I'm going to put a new line at the end of this. Now we'll fill in the variables that we're going to do. So I'm going to say output fname. I'm going to say word count, so we're going to say word count and then line count. And then I'm going to say printer.close because again we should always close all the information we have. Now I have all of this done. What I've done over here is I've already created a text file that I want to save. To make all of this work, all I have to do is save this text file. So I'm going to save the file. Since I only have a single project here, it's easy to find out where it is. So I'm going to click on here and then I'm going to name this what we said our input data file was. Now, by putting it into here, it is going to go into the project root directory, which is fine because all the relative paths we just used will allow this to work. Now that I've done this, I can simply just run my program, and I have nothing here, so let's see what did it produce. Okay, I can come out here to the actual project, I can come down to the properties, and where this resource is, I'm going to click on it. This is going to open up my file explorer, and if I look here, here's my input directory that I've done, here's my output directory. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically open this with Notepad. And as you can see, it says it has 15 words, 6 lines. And if we add it all up, we did pretty good on our count. This is how you can actually do simple file I/O in Java program, and we can take advantage of the Eclipse workspace for relative paths.